Within the abandoned asylum, rusted wires bite into effigies suspended in endless decay. Their hollow forms sway gently, as if lulled by a breath that no longer belongs to the living. When night falls, the silence fractures. The figures convulse, their heads twisting in unison to a broken funereal rhythm. Jonah pulled the car to a halt on the gravel road, where withered trees stretched their skeletal branches toward the ashen sky. Before him loomed the asylum, a corpse of concrete and steel, windows shattered, walls peeled and veined with moss. Clara stepped out, her old camera slung over her shoulder, eyes caught between curiosity and dread. They had heard the stories whispered 100 times before, muffled cries echoing down the corridors, shadows dangling in broken windows, and always the same dreaded name, Dr. Harland. Jonah recounted to Clara the rumors of Harland's puppet therapy, drilling into skulls, wiring patients so their bodies could be made to dance. Many dismissed it as grotesque folklore, but others swore those experiments were the very reason the asylum was shuttered overnight. They pushed at the rust-eaten steel doors. Inges screamed, the sound dragging down the hallway like metal tearing bone. Inside, the stench of ancient disinfectant mingled with mildew, as though the air itself had been trapped since the 60s. Clara lifted her camera, snapping shot after shot, rusted bed frames, suffocating corridors, padded cells gone rotten with mold. Jonah led the way, jotting notes. Clara said nothing, only pressed her shutter again, as though afraid the building's truth might vanish if she didn't capture it fast enough. Darkness thickened as daylight drained from the high windows, swallowing the halls whole. They stopped at the threshold of the great auditorium, where a collapsed wooden stage waited under a ceiling of rusting beams. Jonah felt his own footsteps strike too loud, the echoes bouncing back as though someone unseen matched his pace. Clara drew in a breath, her lens trembling as she tilted it toward the rafters. A sudden flash erupted. For the briefest instant, Jonah glimpsed something. Someone suspended high above. Then blackness reclaimed it. He craned his neck upward, heart pounding, while the air grew heavier, pressing on his chest. From somewhere deep within the asylum came a sound, a drawn-out metallic screech, like strings being tested in the dark. Clara's whisper cracked the silence. "We're not the only ones here." Jonah flicked on his flashlight, its narrow beam slicing through the dark. The light swept across the steel rafters above, and his breath caught. Shapes dangled from the beams. From a distance, they looked like patients in tattered hospital gowns, but their skin was gray, stiff, and lifeless as wood. Clara lowered her camera, hands trembling. She had managed one last shot before the flash revealed the horrific truth. One of the figures twitched, a hand jerking slightly, its neck bent at an unnatural angle as if yanked by invisible reins. Jonah swore every hollow eye socket had turned toward them. A chorus of metallic shrieks echoed overhead. The wires shuddered, pulling the hanging forms taut. Then they moved, not with the fluidity of the living, but stiff and jerky, like wooden marionettes forced to dance. Heads snapped in unison, arms lifted, legs curled, all to a rhythm only they could hear. Jonah staggered back against the wall, cold sweat breaking across his skin. He remembered the patient files he'd studied, rumors of skulls drilled open, wires fed into spines, bodies turned into living puppets. He had never believed it. Not until now. Clara clutched his arm, whispering, They're still being controlled, but by who?" A heavier movement drew their eyes upward. From the shattered stage at the far end of the hall, something massive was rising. It was no longer a man, but a grotesque fusion of steel cables, rotting wood, and clattering joints. A face patched together, half man, half puppet, hung above a hulking body. Jonah knew instantly who it was, Dr. Harland, or what remained of him. The giant puppet bent low, its elongated arms sweeping wide. When it yanked a lever of wire, every dangling patient screamed in unison, a cacophony of cracking wood, grinding joints, and rusted hinges shrieking. The sound drove Clara to her knees, hands clamped over her ears. Jonah tried to haul her up, his eyes locked on the advancing horde. From the rafters, wires slithered downward like roots, snaking toward the floor, carrying the stench of rust and blood. There was only one choice left: flee deeper into the asylum's maze, or be hoisted up as another lifeless puppet. Jonah gripped Clara's hand hard and shouted, "Run!" Their footsteps thundered down the corridor, chased by the mad symphony of shrieking wires and the wooden convulsions of puppets dancing to their unseen master's tune. Wah! The narrow corridor stretched into infinity, every step Jonah and Clara took echoing like a death knell. The trembling beam of the flashlight swept across half-open iron doors, their nameplates faded with time. Room 12, Special Therapy, Room 23, Behavioral Experiments. Wind hissed through cracks in the walls, sounding like the labored breaths of invisible patients. Jonah ran, forcing his lungs into rhythm. In his mind, the asylum's cryptic notes spun in a vicious cycle: marionette therapy, restoring willpower through external control. He had never believed anyone could be cruel enough to attempt such things. But now the truth dangled on wires behind them, swaying in pursuit. Clara halted, pointing to a door left ajar. The faint red lettering still lingered: operating room. "Jonah, we have to look," she gasped. "There might be answers inside." Jonah hesitated. Every instinct screamed at him to keep running, but Clara's gaze, terrified, yet unyielding, pulled him forward. Together, they shoved the door open. The operating room lay in darkness, save for a few dangling bulbs. One flickered to life with a sickly yellow glow, spotlighting the center table. There, shackled in place, lay the skeleton of a patient, ribcage punctured, spine threaded with rusted wires. Clara lifted her camera and clicked. The flash burst across the back wall, unveiling a grotesque mosaic, dozens of sketches tacked side by side. Human bodies redrawn as puppets, their joints hinged with steel, every pencil stroke marking a drill wound. In the center hung the largest draft, its title scrawled in bold: Project Marionette, Total Control. Jonah's stomach twisted. He stepped closer, trembling fingers brushing the smeared ink. At the corner, a signature still lingered: crooked, desperate, Harland, 1963. A sudden clang of metal jolted them. They spun around as the ceiling cracked, wires slithering downward to coil around the skeleton's limbs. The corpse jerked violently, then sat upright, jaw grinding with a splintering rasp. Dot. Clara screamed, while Jonah dragged her into the corner. The puppet corpse staggered forward, wires threaded through its eye sockets and chest, twitching with each unnatural step. Every footfall was the sound of wood splintering, every pull of the wires a discordant note. From the distance came a voice, low and rhythmic, like a conductor's count. 1, 2, 3. Jonah froze. Harland was orchestrating the entire asylum like a stage, each puppet moving to his cadence. He squeezed Clara's hand, eyes locked on the narrow exit across the room. "Run, when I say now." The puppet advanced, iron arm swinging down. Jonah zeised a rusted bar from the floor and swung upward, clashing against the blow. The screech of metal on metal shrieked through the room, sparks flying. In that instant, Clara dashed through the door, Jonah racing after her. They plunged into another corridor, leaving behind the relentless beat echoing through the asylum, louder, heavier, as if the building itself had a pulse. Jonah gasped for air, one truth burning inside him. Unless they destroyed the thing at the center of it all, they too would be dragged upward, to dangle among the others, lifeless marionettes swaying in Harland's grip. Nisai, never way. The metallic shrieks of the wires still trailed them, but Jonah was beginning to notice a pattern. The cadence, 1, 2, 3, echoed from deep within the asylum, steady as a war drum. Each time the rhythm quickened, the puppets they encountered in the corridors twitched awake, turning in unison toward them. "Clara," he whispered, "the sound guides them. If we follow it, we'll find where Harland is pulling the strings." Clara nodded, her face pale, but a spark of resolve flickered in her eyes. She clutched the camera as if it were the last weapon she had. They descended a rotting spiral staircase. Dust coated the steps, clawed with endless gouges where wires had scraped across the stone. Jonah's hand skimmed the damp brick wall, the chill sinking into his skin like a parasite. As they dropped another level, the beat grew clearer, merging with the taut whine of wires pulled too tight, like a violin tuned past breaking. At the bottom stood a massive iron door. 2 words were carved into its surface: Control Ward. It hung slightly ajar, and through the crack spilled a red glow, pulsing with every count of the rhythm. Jonah drew a sharp breath and pushed it open. Inside lay a circular chamber, its ceiling a high dome from which hundreds of wires dangled like metallic roots. Each tether fed into colossal gears that churned with a grinding tempo. And at the very center, enthroned upon a towering chair, sat the husk of Dr. Harland. His body was no longer whole. Half his face had rotted away, yet his eyes remained open, milky and unblinking. Wires pierced his ribs, spine, even the skull itself, latching him into the machinery. Each turn of the gears yanked his body in violent spasms, and with every jolt came the thunder of puppets shifting above. Clara covered her mouth, choking back a scream. Jonah could not look away. This was no mere mad doctor. Harland had transformed himself into the mechanical heart of the asylum, a grotesque puppeteer wired to his own stage. Suddenly, Harland's eyes swiveled, locking onto them. A voice rolled out, not from his mouth, but from every wire, reverberating through the chamber as though the building itself spoke. "The final audience has arrived." The wires shuddered, glowing red-hot. From the fissures in the walls, the patients emerged, dozens of them, shuffling forward. Wooden hands and iron limbs scraped across the floor, closing the circle. Jonah dragged Clara back toward the far corner. His mind raced. He couldn't fight this army. But if Harland was the center, destroying the machinery might end it all. "Clara, listen," he hissed, urgent. "We have to break the main gear. If it stops, everything stops with it." Clara swallowed hard, then nodded. She clutched the camera tighter, ready to hurl it if it meant shattering steel. The puppets advanced, the circle closing in. Harland's laughter rattled through the dome, blending with the screech of grinding gears, a death orchestra swelling to crescendo. Jonah tightened his grip on the rusted iron bar, eyes locked on the glowing heart of the machine. There was only one chance, to strike before the wires closed in, before they too were bound, suspended among the Asylum's collection of lifeless marionettes. Wah! Jonah tightened his grip on the iron rod, his heart pounding like a war drum. The puppets closed in, their hollow eyes gleaming, wires shrieking as they strained. At the center, Harland convulsed with each grinding turn of the gears, half his ruined face curled into a grotesque smile. The audience must join the final act, his voice echoed through the dome, drawn out like a warped lullaby. With a roar, Jonah charged the machine. The iron rod slammed into the blazing gear, sparks bursting in a violent spray. The mechanism shuddered, wires slackened, and the puppets staggered in confusion. Clara screamed his name, her eyes wide with terror. But Harland would not yield. Wires slashed down from the rafters, coiling around Jonah's arm, wrenching him into the grinding maw. His body jolted violently, blood streaking across steel, mingling with the pulsing red glow. Clara rushed forward, clawing to free him, but Jonah's trembling hand pressed against her chest, stopping her. "Clara, run," he gasped, tears brimming in his eyes. "Let me end this." Her scream cracked the silence, but the wires twisted tighter, dragging Jonah into the core of the machine. With the last breath of his strength, he raised the rod and drove it down. The gear split apart with a thunderous crack. Light flared, then died. Silence swallowed the chamber. The puppets collapsed where they stood, strings cut, lifeless. Harland's body crumbled with them, torn to rusted wire and rotted bone. Clara fell to her knees. Before her lay only shattered metal and a smear of blood, the last trace of Jonah. He had been consumed by the machine he destroyed. Beyond the asylum walls, dawn broke at last. Pale light crept through shattered windows, but in Clara's eyes it reflected nothing but a hollow void. The memory of Jonah and the shriek of steel wires would haunt her forever, like a play that refused to end, its curtain never falling. And they see.